Welcome to the Art of Growth and the Driven to Drawn panel series. Special shout out to our Type 3s this week. We are excited for you to learn from our 3 panel. And frankly, we learn from every single one of these panels we do. So we love it. If you are new with us, head over to theartofgrowth.org to take a free Enneagram test or instincts test, which is incredibly important to know. You can also sign up for our newsletter there. And you have to check out the newsletter to hear about the first book coming out of Art of Growth here in the next week. More to come on that. But for now, you know you can reach out to us for coaching or look at having us come in your organization and do some training. And you can begin any of those discussions with us at theartofgrowth.org. So email us and we'll find out what approach is best for you. But for now, my friends, let's go ahead and jump in with this week's 3 panel.
Well, welcome to the Type 3 Driven to Drawn podcast. I am so excited to have you here with us. And we've been doing this sort of research project, really asking people, what does it look like for you to be driven? And what does it look like for you to be drawn? It is much easier when we begin the work of self-development to tune in to the driven part, the part of ourselves that we just are who we are, and we're doing it rather unconsciously. The distinction between that little subnote here, between the drive to get something done and the drivenness that we're talking about, is that drivenness is unconscious. The drive to get up and do something, that's a different thing. And so that drivenness is that ego, the personality that's just an automatic pilot. And so when we begin the work of awareness and growth, we tune into that. But what we seldom tune into is also the drawn part, which is the part of us that has that aspiration. It's sort of the high side of that low side, the low side of the drivenness, and the high side is the drawnness. But it's much more difficult to bring our attention to that and to keep our attention on it. So that's why we're doing this, is to help learn a little bit more about what that looks like, and then see if we can, by talking about it, thinking about it, we start bringing more attention to it. And so as we begin, I just want to get to know you a little bit. So tell me where you're from and your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Ursula, and I'm from Southern California.
Hi, I'm Tamara, and I'm from the mountains in Idaho.
I'm Sarah, and I'm in Nashville area, Nashville, Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Jeremy, and I'm in Loveland, Colorado.
All right. Well, welcome to each of you. I met with each of you before this and asked you to talk to me about this. And so I'd love to hear so much more about what it means for you to be driven, what that looks like, what's the energy that's going into it, maybe what's going on inside you. What do you feel when you're in that driven state? And maybe what you're doing. What is it causing you to do as well? So who would like to start?
I'll start, and I want to first start off by saying this was a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around and decipher as a 3. And I don't know, I think might be specific to a 3 or enhanced in the 3, is it's really hard for me to distinguish what I'm drawn to versus what I'm driven to, because I get so much satisfaction in being driven. So it's almost like a mask that I'm putting over my driven activities that almost make it seem to me as drawn activities. So I, through work, through, social events, through just being at home, by accomplishing things and being successful at things, it's so energizing to me and rewarding to me that it looks very much to be drawn.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the external, we might not pick up on that. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I want to explore that a little bit more, but I want to hear from the other 3 here. What does it look like when you're driven? What are you feeling? What are you doing in that space? And I really appreciate how you started us off, Sarah, by saying, hey, it can look that way. So you can even practice this sort of like as 3s are, the literature around the 3 is that self-deceit, is one of the
Yeah.
One of the ways that threes, identify with with whatever role they're in, and so that self-deceit there shows up even in the space of like, no, I love this, right? Like because I'm succeeding. So thanks for saying that.
I thought of when we talked, I thought of a story and a quick little, and for me, when it's been helpful for me to kind of reflect back on that in regards to like preparing for this talk or whatnot. But I was at the beach with my kids. We live in SoCal. And so I was at the beach with my kids and they were trying to teach me how to body surf. And it sounds really easy, but it's not. And so I'm like, yeah, whatever. I got it. And so when the wave comes, you're supposed to hold your breath and go underneath the wave. And then you pop up on the other side. It's like magic when it happens. It's beautiful. And so this was the first time I was out and I did exactly what they said, only I ended up with my feet in the air and I'm like beer guzzling seawater. And it's an LA beach. It's not delicious. It's not delicious. So I'm now trying to make my way back to shore because I'm done because, it didn't work the way I wanted to, just like a good three. And I was ready to be done. Okay, that's it. I'm out. It's over. And so I'm trying to work my way back to the shore and I'm like grabbing at sand and I'm being pummeled by the waves as, they keep crashing on me. And I'm just trying to, in my own strength, trying to muster up whatever I have to get back to shore. And as a three, you guys, if I'm being honest, the thing that came to my mind is what do I look like right now in this bathing suit? Am I totally cute? And I wasn't cute because the wrap I had on was like wrapped around my head like a turban and I'm like snot coming out of my nose, everything. It's just horrible. Anyway, so I get to the shore and I finally, arrive and I'm like heaving and salt water is everywhere. And I look into the water and I see my daughter coming at me and she's like swimming like a dolphin and just cutting through the waves. She's like Michael Phelps. She's breaststroking, and just with ease. And she actually ends up right next to me. And she's laughing at me because my children love to laugh at me. And she puts her arm around me and she says, you know what, Mama, you're not stronger than the ocean. You just have to let the waves take you where you want to go. And when I think about being driven and being drawn, of course, in the story, I was the driven person. I was driven to get to where I was going. And as threes, we're awesome. And I hate to be the first one that says it, but threes are awesome, you guys.
Yes, we are.
Thank you, Sarah. And we get put on teams. We get asked to be there. We get, asked to speak. But that drive is so exhausting. And when I think about the fact that my daughter ended up in the same exact place being drawn and allowing herself to kind of just be drawn to the shore, it is so much more replenishing and refreshing. And Joel, you said it, we can get there in ego and being driven, but there's not very much of you left afterwards.
Wow.
And when you're drawn, you have so much more energy left over to be there for family, to be there for friends and your career. I know when I speak and I'm driven versus drawn, I am exhausted afterwards and I'm like ready to go home. They're like, Ursula, it's 7:00. What do you mean that you want to go home and go to bed? I'm done, But on the occasions where I allow myself just the space to kind of lean in, and I think that's what it takes as a three, is that lean in. And I'm drawn into the space. It's more replenishing.
Wow. Thank you.
I really like what you said about how when it works correctly, it's almost like magic there. I had a kind of an opposite experience from Sarah when I started thinking about this driven or drawn, it was very obvious to me when I was being driven, when I was drawn. And I'm into classical music. So when I am driven, I'm feeling very much like, don't fail at this. You got to play all the notes correctly. All the rhythms have to be correct. And I'm a conductor. So I was always, when I'm driven, I'm feeling this failure just right on the other side of one mistake. And then suddenly that's it. And then, so when I'm drawn, I feel like I can make magic in this space that I've provided for myself. And now it's not about, oh, I don't want to fail at this. It's about like, what magic can I create with what I'm trying to do? And so it was a really, really stark difference for me when I'm driven and when I'm drawn.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of in between Sarah and Jeremy. It took me a while to sit with it and kind of try to differentiate. But once I tapped into, it's an energetic level for me. Kind of like when I'm driven, it's like a high, more agitated type of energy. And Jeremy, just like you said it, like everything has to be right. There's like things need to be in its place. Things have to succeed. I find I get very married to my ideas if we're in that kind of problem solving kind of space, and I accomplish a lot. I mean, I think that's the problem. It is because we get so much done, so we can get like caught up in that. But a lot of times I find, for me anyway, the drawn then comes kind of with the driven. But if I can then kind of identify the energetic shift into a much more calmer state, a more trusting state or hopeful state, as you're trying to grow, it's a calmer kind of energy. But I do find that they sometimes go hand in hand, and I have to kind of like consciously step away to allow myself to trust, to let mistakes happen or just see where things go. I think the hardest thing for me is to kind of let go of the reins. But when I do, magic happens. Truly.
Yeah.
Boy, this is already really deep. This is fantastic. So the driven and the drawn, you're describing them, and all of you are saying something similar. They can be very close to each other. They're sometimes indistinguishable. And so, like Sarah brought up, like there are times in your life, Sarah, where it's indistinguishable. You can't tell. And it's almost in retrospect that you can see it. And I think that's true for all of us, that there's aspects of where we're not going to see what the drive is, or the drivenness is, until later. But then there's times where you can see it's an energetic difference, as you were talking about, Tamara. It's an energetic difference. I'm feeling it, and just a little bit of a turn towards the drivenness will bring in that rigidity, that inflexibility, that married to my ideas, that really strong push, and it turns more into a fight. I was talking to a 3 who said, I can see the drawn inside the driven at times, but
you can be drawn and suddenly shifted to driven. Like you embrace the drawn and you're so proud, and then all of a sudden, like it becomes, now it's a task. Like, can I give a quick example?
Please, yeah.
I became a Zumba instructor 12 years ago. It was something I found. I loved to dance, and it was something I was drawn to. It was something I had no responsibility to. I didn't need to do it. I followed it and fell in love. And it's probably the longest thing I've done just for me. And my ex-husband really was encouraging me to make it my full-time thing outside of corporate, like quit that, do this. But I fought it because I knew the minute I made that shift, then it became a job. It became a task. It would take that love and creativity away. And I find now that I've been doing, being an instructor for 12 years, I have to take a step back. I have to take time off, like months at a time, because it becomes just this driven task, and it loses all that special sparkle that it gave me, not even for everybody else. And then when I come back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I do this. Because there's like this love there that's really deep. But yeah, it gets so murky so quick sometimes. And I'm not sure if that's unique to us as 3s or not, but it'll be interesting to see what other people say outside of the 3 world.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you said that, Tamara, because I have a similar story about, I went to college, I worked in the music industry, and that was something I was really driven to, but working in it daily, you kind of get jaded and you lose your passion for it. And now I'm in corporate America, one of the largest companies in the world. And I guess it's hard for me. It seems so selfish as a 3 to focus on something that I'm driven towards, because I know I can provide so much value in something that I'm drawn towards, because I can provide so much value in other things that I'm driven to. I don't feel like I'm completely giving as much as I need to the world or to society. It's like, yes, I'm doing this thing that I'm driven to, but there's so many other things that the world needs me for that I'm neglecting or pushing away because I'm just focusing on me and this thing that I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
So one of the ways I've been thinking about this recently is that when I'm drawn to something, that's where I do my best work, and my best work is done with other people. I've noticed that when I'm feeling driven, when I'm feeling kind of stressed and worried and just, I got to get this right. It's almost like I am actually driving away from people. I become so internal about what I'm doing and I feel like everything is focused on me. I become so egocentric that, everybody's going to see every little failure and then that's the end of me. But when I'm drawn to it, that's drawn to the possibility that I can create with other people. So it's really interesting to me that you made that distinction between yourself and other people, because I've absolutely noticed those two opposites in that way as well.
What's your subtype, Jeremy?
I'm a self-pres 3.
Okay. That's interesting that your strength comes out when you're around and surrounded other people as a self-pres, I guess. Maybe when we lift up our weakness in our subtype that we find some more magic.
A lot of where it happens is in my preparation beforehand. As a conductor, I do weeks and months of preparation before I actually get up with the orchestra. So a lot of it is what type of preparation is that? Is that frantically rushing so that I don't make any mistakes? Or is that having the space to actually prepare and absorb and create my own interpretation? So that's it's still that solitude in which I find the two, but they're both also outward facing ultimately.
I think too, that's the 3 going to 6 in health too. Joel, what do you think about that thought? I find that when I'm in a group kind of situation or a group setting, I can feel myself moving to 6, and that's where 3s go to in health. And then, in that kind of 6 space and that 6 energy, I do feel more drawn to be less kind of micromanaging and less, kind of pinpointy and nitpicky, which I can totally be in the ego side or the driven side of my 3 space. And but yeah, I think that's interesting too.
Yeah, Jeremy, I love that. You just sparked that for me. I'm a sexual 3. And it makes total sense, but I never put the 2 and 2 together. That when I'm driven, I still work with people, but it's more of me dictating or get my to-do list or whatever we have to submit. And then when I feel drawn, I love to share. Like I started writing a blog and I've been drawn to that. And I'm doing it because I actually want to share with others and start conversations and all of that, where in the driven state, that's just not even on the radar.
Well, you even mentioned being like sticking with what you think is right first. And that can even come from then accepting other people's opinions and views when you're in a better place.
Yeah. See how close that is? It's remarkable. It's just these little turns of like, I can feel myself starting to pull away to do my work or to try to get it right versus like, no, this is me at my best is when I'm relaxed and I'm taking others' input with an open mind, listening and not yet, fixated on some particular agenda. I love this. This is so helpful. And for those of you who those who don't know about the 3s, both need for solitude or heart types need to pull away to be with themselves, but also moving towards people. It sounds like which one is it? But what we're talking about here, and for those who have heard that for heart types, the sort of practice that's important is solitude. That has to do more with when I can feel myself wanting or needing desperately that approval, that sense of identity that comes from the way people see me. That's a good time to pull away so that I can remind myself that my resources are internal and not just external, And then there's the sort of, but it all depends on me, as the type three's mindset is, which it's like the only way to success is you have to control the whole entire process, right? That's what's terrifying, because you're moving towards people, and people are people.
Yeah. I think also too, a big component for me when I'm being driven versus drawn is authenticity. As a 3, we can struggle with authenticity. I always tell people it's difficult. It's like you find yourself in this place where this is what you've been asked to do, but it's really not who you are for real. But if you can tap into what is true or what's authentic, and that also needs to have trust in it. And we have to. What I find is that I have to allow myself to relinquish to what's happening in that drawn space. I can feel myself trying to, control it or be the driver of the car or whatever. But when I relinquish and kind of lean back and let go and trust the direction it's going in, I find that it's easy for me to identify, okay, yeah, this is good, drawn space. And at the end of it, I'm not so exhausted at the end of it. I'm not so exhausted because at the end of it, I have something left to give. Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned at the beginning, I really, really love that sort of story, and the story that becomes a metaphor for how to live as a 3. It's just, really brilliant. Is the effortlessness of when you're moving more towards drawn space.
Yeah.
And for a 3, that's pretty key. For other types, that's a little different. It maybe needs a little bit more of a push. But for the 3, it's, that deep breath of can you flow effortlessly, even though the waves are beating you and you're fighting the waves, and you're describing your daughter just comes swimming naturally over.
Yeah.
It's the that sounds like a key characteristic for type 3s of when you're moving in that drawn space, there's a little less a little less effort in the process.
Yeah.
I think there's also, or something for me I've noticed is that when I am working towards something I'm drawn to, I'm less likely to give up on it when it gets hard.
Yeah.
I'm more willing to struggle through it and actually face some failure or obstacles without being like, okay, never mind, and give up. Moving into being a coach, leaving my corporate job and coming into my own business, that has been an ongoing thing for me. There are definitely days that I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? I was so successful before. I got a lot of value out of it. I made a decent wage, and it was good. It was safe. Now into this space, it's my own business. It's only me to answer to. And it's hard and it's vulnerable and it's exposing. And I don't know the right steps, but I keep finding that I'm still struggling through it. I don't think I would have done that if it was something I was just driven towards at all.
I love that you brought that up, Tamara. Can I ask, what is your business that you have?
I have my own, I call it an empowerment coach. I work with people through transition and using integral method and in the Enneagram. And I started it actually in 2020, halfway through. And
awesome.
My driven stuff was doing the website. That was driving me freaking bananas. And I finally had to ask for help, which was another hard thing for me to do. Admit that I couldn't do it on my own. Mostly the About Me page, I'll just share. I didn't know who I was, so I couldn't write that because it was way too long, because of course we want to put all our accolades out there. But yeah, and so once I asked for help there and I started focusing on the work and the clients, and then I discovered my blog and kind of just focusing on the stuff that actually was inside me to come out. That's where I'm finding more joy in, but it hasn't been easy at all. But yeah, well, thanks for asking.
I'm curious, and the reason I ask is because I'm kind of in this space of trying to figure out what my next, what I want to be when I grow up, is what I always tell people. Because I want to kind of introduce and talk about a little bit about the concept of liminal space that I've been thinking a lot about. You know, the idea of you're not where you want to go, but you're not where you've been. It's that space in between that I think for threes is probably the most uncomfortable space to be in the world. And I really, really struggle with that sense of, you know, solitude that Joe mentioned, and being, you know, quiet and being with myself. If I have a spare moment, I'll fill it. It just makes me feel like I'm doing things with my life, even though they're meaningless things sometimes. And it's so hard for me to sit still and sit with myself to really figure out what I want to do and where I truly want to go next. I love going on road trips because it forces me to be in the car and do nothing but drive. I can't be on my phone. I can't do other things. I can't be accomplishing anything else but being either with me or the person that I'm next to talking to. And it's forcing me to kind of calm everything else in my world down in order to try to discover. I have the deepest conversations when I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, why can't I have this conversation with anybody else at any other moment of time? Because I'm going to the gym. I can't I can't be 10 minutes later to afterwards to socialize with some of the people at the gym, because I've already shoved my schedule with 3 other things that I'm doing, one right after another. So I don't allow myself to give myself that space to find that out. It's scary.
Yeah, I had to schedule unscheduled time. Like I literally blocked my calendar and said, do nothing. Not that I was sitting like meditating, because that does not happen in my space. I do something for me that I consider selfish, right? Go for a walk, watch TV, call a friend, do something that has no value per se to others. And now it's started to become not a habit. It's becoming easier that I don't need to schedule it anymore. And part of that is being in the corporate world, or just our society, you're kind of like, it's just beat into you. And as a 3, we're just sponges. We're like, yes, feed me more. So, cause it just validates what we do naturally. So, that could be something you could try, but the liminal space is a totally new concept that Joel actually pointed out to me when he and I were talking, and I was expressing my frustration with where I'm at in my world. Yes, I'm a coach, but I don't know what I want to be when this coach grows up. Like I'm still figuring out the vision or the clarity of my business. So it's a very let's throw this one on the dartboard. What does it hit? Yeah.
And I think that's actually the challenge for me. I want to know what the long-term vision is and the goal. And sometimes it's not there. Do we always have to see it? No, let's just take that step and do it. I want all of the answers before I make a move. And sometimes you have to jump blindly, and it's scary. So I honor you, Tamara. I'm so proud that you made that jump, because it sounds like you went from that corporate world to something that's so uncertain to whether, you're going to be successful at it. And I don't know if I'd be brave enough to do it. So I'm proud of you.
I can't I won't take all the credit. I have a very supportive partner who's a 7 and loves to do a lot of different stuff. And he probably selfishly, he wanted me to free up out of corporate so we could go do fun stuff.
That's
but
mostly
yeah,
what it was.
but it's very supportive.
A wild guess that might be the case there.
Yeah. But that helped tremendously, because if I didn't have him like there and encouraging me, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done it. At least not yet.
Yeah, well, that's one of the tips that we keep hearing from different panelists when we say, "Hey, how do you move from driven to drawn?" And a number of them have said so far, there are a lot of factors that play in. Definitely habits, but support, having a network, having somebody who can help you with that I had someone actually say to me with full confidence, I don't believe that I can fully transform without a community supporting me in that process. I think that probably is true for a lot of us. And you're nodding your heads up and down. So that seems to be important. And so let's continue down this path of like, what are some of the habits that are helpful? So community, talk more about that piece of community, whatever else comes to mind as helps to get you there.
I think like the other two ladies said, one of the things, I'm a wedding and portrait photographer here in SoCal. And one of the things that I do or have found is I get really burnt out, shooting weddings and family portrait sessions and all that stuff all the time. I start to kind of I hate carrying a camera around. Sometimes I get into these places, these spaces. And so what I'll do is I'll grab, it's a 50 millimeter lens, and you have to be still when you use it. And I set everything to manual, and I don't have a tripod, and it's just out of my control what's going to be in focus and what's going to be out of focus. Some of these things are technical, but I hope it translates. But the main thing is that it causes me to slow down, and I have to think outside of a box. I don't have like a zoom lens. I don't have, these other kind of specialty tools in my arsenal. It's just me and it's called a nifty 50, me and my nifty 50. And I just take pictures of whatever I want. I don't have to get a bride. I don't have to get the groom. I don't have to get the flower girl. I don't have to get anything. It's just for me. And I love how Sarah talked about how when she does that, that she feels that drawn space, she feels like she's being selfish. I think that's that the achiever in us wants to be doing something, and we have to allow ourselves to just be okay with doing nothing. And like, as I'm saying it inside, like the Ursula inside is like, that is ridiculous, lady. It's ridiculousness. But we have to be okay with that slowing down and, taking breaths.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes you have to outsmart your ego, because it is so smart. You have to go, well, I'm bringing the 50 millimeter. I'm bringing my nifty 50.
Yes, we're doing it.
because otherwise I'm going to bring everything, and then I'm going to be stuck to this. So it's great. These are just great hacks for us, thinking through, in what ways can I do something that then I force myself into that space of, being more centered and then moving towards drawn.
Talking about space, that's the biggest thing that I find getting me into being drawn for something. Like I said earlier, driven is usually kind of like a stressful, I have to catch up. I'm running away from something. But the biggest time when I really started to first notice being drawn, it happened this summer before we started thinking about it. But I was at a friend's wedding in Phoenix, and I had like 3 or 4 days with nothing to do except for hang out with my friends and go to a wedding. So I wasn't rushing to do anything. I was able to wake up early and have some coffee and sit by the pool and just like explore this Beethoven symphony, and I didn't have to do anything. And that was one of the first times recently that I really remember feeling like a transformative like mindset and energy switch in how I was doing my thing. And it really was because I had the space. I didn't have to learn this piece for several months, but I had some time to just start exploring, and there was nothing I had to do. So I could find the things that I could do with that time and with that that mental and physical and temporal space that I had made for myself by starting so early. So that's the biggest thing that I do, is I make sure that I have the space in my schedule where I'm not rushing to get something done by a deadline, where I start much earlier. And that's really been helping the past couple months.
I have a friend who says, years ago told me I have to put margins. I have to put them in my calendar, because if I don't, I will fill up every minute.
Yep.
And so he was doing literally scheduling time for himself. So it sounds like you're doing that, which is really, really good for type 3s.
I find the minute I have to do anything, it shifts. Like whether it's something I'm working on and I'm drawn to it, the minute there's some sort of have to, it becomes a driven, and now it's a task. And I don't know how to shift that. I'm still wondering in that, or if it's even possible to make a shift when there's like a deadline or somebody else is like, it just has to get done. I know when there's something I have to do, but it doesn't, like, I'll procrastinate until now it's like a total have to do. And then, cause I know I'll get it done. But when it's like,
Yeah,
it scares me in the least bit. I'm just going to keep waiting.
I wonder if it's a scarcity of time thing, because when I feel like I have to do something before this deadline, all I want to do is all the other things that I want to do that I don't have time for. So, but when I have 3 or 4 days to do nothing, then I can do what I want to do. And it's very, very different. So I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Well, I think it's funny because I can see myself in that pattern too, Tamara, but I think it's when they talk about higher up executives accomplishing things and being successful in corporate America, they focus on their A1 goals, the things that are the most important. And it's so easy for us to get caught up in, I have this project or something that I have to get done. I did this with an email today. I had an email that I needed to write, and it was a long email. And I'm like, this is going to take a minute. And I don't let me get all of the little things done before I can focus on that. But the thing is, with me, there's endless little things. I end up putting stuff in my, Kroger shopping cart and rescheduling a hair appointment and all these other things because I'm putting off this giant email that I need to write. It's not hard, but I can't sit and focus long enough to do it. I ended up dictating the email because I could walk around and do the dishes while I was dictating the email, and I didn't have to type on the computer. But that's how this is much time saving that I wanted to do. But I did all of the other little things first before focusing on the important thing.
Yeah. It's remarkable, because this is the need for success and the need for immediate hits, right? This is how our ego works for every type. There's something it is giving to us in the moment. And so makes sense as a 3 needing that success and knowing that this big project, this big email, this big thing that you're going to do, it's a lot of risk to it. May not give you that, that hit right away. There's so many things that go into it.
If there's emotion tied to it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No. This is so good. Talk to me about how people who care about you, who are close to you, can help you. Talked about a little bit about that, support, the need for that. What can people do? Those who know a type 3 in relationship with one, and they want to help in some way. What would you say? How would you coach them to help a 3? Pivot from being driven in that moment to maybe helping them to come back to their best self, their better version of who they are.
Not put their own expectation on it. So the example I'm going to use is my father wants to be supportive of what I do, but he gets in his mind what he wants. And he will tell you, you need to become this, or you need to do this. And he feels like it's a pushing. Or anybody, if I feel judged or pushed at all into a certain lane where I'm still trying to figure out what my lane is, it completely disconnects. So on the opposite side, to help for me, encourage me, is to get me into conversation, help me kind of like play with the idea creatively, but without any like expectations or push, just kind of giving me a place to be a sounding board and to bounce ideas off of, to, give me their thoughts, but not with like some sort of like, well, you need to do this type of thing.
I agree. I think just others not putting, the expectations, because our personality is motivated by making other people proud of us, right? And to find someone that you truly authentically feel that loves you and cares about you, no matter what your personality or your face that you're wearing at that moment, or they can see through it. It's very magical when you find that person. But like, I grew up, my mom's a counterphobic 6, my brother's an 8, my dad's a 5. There's not a lot of emotions there. And they're all very strong personalities as well. And so it's very easy I have a hard time expressing what I want and what I'm drawn to or desires, because the biggest thing I fear is somebody's going to criticize that or tell me why it's not going to work, and that's my biggest fear. It's like, well, and then as a 3, I'm like, well, if I'm going to hit these hurdles right out of the gate, I'm not even going to try, because I know I'm not going to be successful at it. So why don't I just do something that everybody thinks I'm going to be successful at? And it's just easier that way. I don't have to fight all of the personalities around me to try to convince them that I'm doing this for me. And I'm doing this because it's something that I'm drawn to, and I'm going to find, just gratitude and be successful in my own vision. Success for me is what success is in their eyes. And it's hard for us to separate that.
Yeah.
I think another way that you can help support a 3 is by helping them see what they've already accomplished. I get really stuck sometimes because I'm always, when I'm driven, I'm always looking forward. I'm always looking towards the next thing that I haven't yet accomplished. So one thing that my wife does really well is when I'm really freaking out, she just says like, look, you've already done this, you've done this, and you've done this, and you've done this, and you've done this. Like, you've done enough. Like, it's okay. And that really helps me calm down and get back into being confident in myself instead of always seeking that next level of approval.
Oh, that is so good.
It is.
My husband reminds me of how I can show up or how I'm showing up in a situation. My husband is white, and I'm African American. And so it is a lot of juggling that happens. And then on top of that, I'm a 3. And so my husband's always just reminding me, like, Ursula, my family loves you for who you are. You don't have to be anything extra, and you don't have to be anything extra for your family. Just show up the way you're going to show up authentically. And so he's always encouraging me, like how I can show up. And I think it's been so helpful. And my daughter, who was this, Michael Phelps in the ocean.
I like the dolphin metaphor.
She always tells me, Mom, you're not stronger than the ocean, and it's because she's heard me tell the story over, and over again. But it's funny. It's kind of a joke between us, but it does help me come back to, I'm not stronger than this situation. I don't have to be the strongest thing here. I can allow myself to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling. And that usually helps pull me through it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you don't know who in type 3s, you don't know how you don't know what's happening inside. This may go over your head as like, what was it? It's not that big of a deal. For a 3, everything you guys are saying is like, this is so difficult. I coach so many 3s, and this is what they talk about is like, one said, I feel like I'm interviewing for a job every single day I show up, and I'm the CEO of my own company. Like this is what's crazy about like how much for 3s, it's like, I'm back to 0 every day. It's the quota. It's that, every sale, it's like the salesperson, come December 1st, back to 0 again. And the need to perform. And so as you brought up, Jeremy, about remembering, helping to have someone remind you of the things you've done, and Ursula, to be told, like, it's okay, you're not stronger than the ocean, you don't have to put all that effort and that fight into it. So these are so good. People giving you space, Tamara, and Sarah, opening up and creating space for you without an agenda. Really, really important and very helpful for threes. So
also helping me connect into the emotional space, especially if it's something that's budding, right? Not talking about it logistically, but connecting to emotion, because it's there, and the minute it's tapped in, it's like a fresh keg, man. It just is like when you can access it. So that is super helpful, because we can be very emotional individuals, and being the heart center, it's just we can be so disconnected, even when we think we're not, even when we try really hard. So somebody to actually just open that door and spend some time with you in that area.
Yeah. And not I think when we do open that door to our emotional closet, if you will, because it's just a little walk-in closet in my house where I keep all of my emotions, and the door doesn't open very often, but when it does, whoever you're with at the moment, it's really important for them to be able to understand how big of a deal it is to share that space and to not quickly move on to something else, to sit and explore that and ask questions and really have those deep discussions, because that's so energizing to me. After I come up, I feel like I'm on cloud 9 when I actually am able to access my emotions about a certain topic or something that I'm passionate about, and somebody wants to sit and discuss it with me. Because I feel like as a 3, there's so many times that we might say something that peeks into that closet, and whoever you're with shuts the door on you really quick, and you're like, oh, well, I'm never doing that again, because that's not what this person wanted to talk about, and I feel too much all the time. So it's so refreshing when you find somebody that you can talk to where your emotions aren't too much for them. And I know that's something that we talk about in 4s, where they are very emotional and they always feel like they're too much because they have so many emotions. I feel like even my sliver of emotion is too much for people, when it's normally not the case, but that's just my internal, concept of it, if you will.
When we do let just a little bit out, it's different from the persona that we're usually putting on.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so it's scary, because then you're possibly stepping into that space of, oh, this person thinks I'm fake now because they've seen this, and I'm now opening the door to who I truly am and what I feel inside. And they're going to be like, what the heck? That's not who I thought, how I thought you were at all. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
For me, it's also that needed shift, or another way for me to differentiate driven versus drawn. If there's emotion connected to it and I can touch it, and I can touch it, I know that's that drawn space. Whether I stay there or not, or what it becomes, I don't know. But because I'll tell you, spreadsheets, there's no emotion. That is all driven.
Yeah. The ability to talk passionately about something and not feel like the other person is judging you, I think, is that drawn space for me. I am going to share this about me, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. I do this about the Enneagram all the time. A lot of times I won't share anything about the Enneagram because I'm like, this person's probably way over this person's head. They have no idea what it is. And I'm so deep into this that whatever I say, or if somebody's read articles or taken a test and not done all of the work that we have, it's hard to talk about that because it's almost discrediting towards the way I feel towards it. And so if I find somebody that I can talk deeply with that I know knows the Enneagram, I'm like, all, it's like a waterfall. Everything's like drinking from a fire hose. It's like, oh, I've been searching for this, and somebody's also can like be there in that space with me. And it's very energizing.
Yeah.
Because you no longer have to perform. You're not
like, oh, you get me. Okay, cool.
There's earlier this year, somebody told me about an Enneagram album. The 3 song is one of my go-to crying songs. And the word I love in that is unabridged. And just like, you can just be you without editing anything.
Yeah.
And that word always really gets me when it gets to that point in that song.
Wow. Yeah. I love it. This is so good because that's, for those in relationships with 3s, we might see a 3 a particular way. And of course, the longer you're in a relationship with a 3, you see the different sides of them. But you may look at them and say, well, what happened? All of a sudden they're becoming emotional. I had a question though for you, Jeremy, being a male and representing all men in the world.
Yeah, of course.
Does it help for you when someone close to you is asking you how you feel about something, as was mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it mostly happens with only the closest of friends that I open up with. I have very few close friends and a lot of acquaintances. And so it's really just my family. And I don't even open up like that with my parents very often. Even people that close to me, it's so rare. So when I can take a moment to cry about something, or when I can take a moment to just be so overjoyed about something and tell somebody how excited I am, or how happy I am, or how proud I am, like, yeah, that's really important for me to feel comfortable enough to share that. But if somebody asks me, I mean, that happens so rarely. I wish that happened more often. And again, my wife is really the only one that I'm close enough that she actually asks me how I'm feeling about something. So that should definitely be something that everybody should do more often.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the secret to the 3's heart, I think, is being comfortable and asking how you're feeling about something, and being okay with not realizing that they might not have the answer to that at the moment. That's something, or they need to talk through it. A lot of times I don't know how I feel about something because I haven't allowed myself to sit with it long enough. And sometimes talking through it triggers all sorts of light bulbs for me, but having somebody that you can comfortably sit and talk through it with is very important in a 3's life, I think, but it's very hard to get to that place and to find.
My husband is a 1. And when Sarah, when you said what you said about the front closet, and that's where all my emotions are, that just rang so true to me because, I've been married to my husband. It'll be it'll be 30 years in September, next September. And so we've been together for a long time, ups and downs, ins and outs. But what he does as an Enneagram 1, he's a 1 on the Enneagram. He likes to fix things. He's a fixer of things. And he shows up and he'll ask me what's wrong. And then I'll tell him, you're welcome. And then he tries to fix it. And so that's been something that has been a source of frustration for me because I don't want to be fixed. I just want to tell you what's up, like what's wrong, what's going on, like on the inside. Let me just lay this out ugly, the good, bad, all of it, snot, tears, all of it. And then we can move on from there. And maybe we don't fix it. Maybe it doesn't get fixed and that's okay. And it's taken him as a 1 to a long time to just be okay with it not being perfect or it not being fixed. And it's super sweet. And I know, a lot of ladies, oh, so sweet that he wants to fix you. Oh, it's so cute. Whatever. I don't.
As a 3, you're fully capable of fixing it. You got the situation under control.
I'm not a flat tire. I don't need to be fixed. And so it's taken some time, but I think that's important to say.
Yeah.
Listen, Don't fix it.
That's great. And that's great advice for all types, all 9 types. But this is helpful because it's a window into the heart types. And as we're in the heart types in the podcast series, that's what we're looking at is, what are the ways that we can help heart types to move more towards themselves. And so a lot of what you've mentioned, I can totally hear type 2s and type 4s going, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. That whole thing of being listened to, heard, and the emotions being held as opposed to fixed is tremendously helpful for heart types, and something we head types and body types need to learn how to do a little bit more. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. What Ursula was just saying about we don't need to be fixed. I feel like as 3s, we fixed ourselves too much. And now what we need to do is unfix that fixedness.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, big thanks to all 4 of you. So insightful, so open. I really love the openness and the transparency here today. Grace and peace to each of you.
So thank you for joining us, and make sure you are subscribed so you hear from all the types and learn about all of them. We want to help people grow in self-awareness, but just as important is growing in social awareness, because that impacts us, how we relate to the world around us. And it's important for us to understand and know all types in order to do that. You can follow us on Instagram at Art of Growth. And if you leave a review for the show, it really helps people find us, helps the algorithms out and all that snazzy stuff that I don't understand, but I know it helps. I want to leave you with this final thought, because I was just coaching a type 3 who has essentially been told that their gift is a problem, that their drive and the way that they move through the world is not good. And I want to remind every 3 out there that your gift is good and that we need it. That you in your drawn state have a beautiful fulfillment of your own needs and desires, but you also provide so much value to those around you. And so many of us thrive and excel more because your gifts are present. So today, my friends, may you feel the need within you, that churning and that stirring within your soul that cannot be dimmed without you losing the best of yourself. So let your light shine. Be who you are. Be the fully redeemed version of your gift and not what anyone else would make you. You will always see into the world around you, and you will always perceive its messages, but check in with your own body, heart, and mind to know what freedom looks like for you and what achievement and success means to the highest form of you in your drawn state. Grace and growth, my friends.